Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome to the 77th audio chat on the Q News Patriot Rumble Channel series. I am the Q News Patriot, joined today by Kirk Elliott, PhD from Kirk Elliott Precious Metals. My name is SG Anon. As we watch the events transpire before us in this Great Awakening journey, we are watching the fall of Rome. We are watching a 1929 style event, I believe, on steroids, building for the Western world, because as much of the audience out there is going to be aware of, a fundamental restructuring of the Federal Reserve central banking system must happen, or we will have an endless tyranny in the world, which will never be controllable and will never be stoppable. Kirk has a long background in investments that we don't talk a whole lot about whenever him and I come together, but it offers incredibly good lens for understanding how markets are manipulated, how they're purposefully depressed, suppressed, maybe is a better way to say that, and how this absorption process from one system of the other would actually go. Additionally, he's been watching the market behavior since the assassination attempt of President Trump on the 13th of July, 2024. And what we've seen can only be described, even professionally, as a walk back and a significant panic. I'm excited to break these events down, look at the time frame ahead of us between now and the November election. Kirk, thank you very much for joining.
Oh, it's so great to be with you, SG.
Well, I'm honored that we're going to be able to have this conversation sort of leaving July and into August. I know that everybody's schedules tend to escalate and accelerate as we come into that end of the summer season, beginning of the autumn season. And I thought it would be only apropos to talk about the acceleration that we've seen in the market space. We've seen the CrowdStrike events. We've seen the outright failure of banking systems, not banks themselves, but rather digital systems within those banks over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Enormous hacks happening all across the world. Just this morning, I was tracking a number of cyber hacks that all hit Switzerland essentially simultaneously. And we know that that ties back into that banking system. It's almost as if the 13th of July was an event in the financial world that was being organized for a significant amount of time in its lead up. And when it did not occur, it caused some sort of walk back and redesign. Am I over the line in characterizing things that fashion?
No, I don't think that you are. So when you look at like the personality of markets, right? It's like what causes gold and silver to go up, for example? Chaos, uncertainty, turbulence, turmoil, change, all of that. What causes normal, like stock market, bond market, normal traditional markets, right? What causes them to go up? The opposite of that. So consistency of future expectations, right? Like it's so because if you were to invest in any company, you're going to say, oh, I like their product. I like their management. The economy is going good because I'm going to invest in them because 5, 10, 20 years from now, when I retire, I want my portfolio to be bigger, right? That's consistency, right? So two completely opposite things. So the day that the assassination attempt was made on Trump, what happened to gold and silver, right? Soon following that, they went up quite a bit. What happened to the US dollar? It went up. It's like, this is peculiar because normally when gold and silver go up, it's because the dollar is coming down. But both were going up at the same time. Okay, this is very abnormal behavior, right? So of course, that an assassination attempt on presidential candidate, right? I mean, so that's chaos, that's uncertainty. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's going to come next? Gold and silver went up. But here's the thing the people in America are looking at what's been happening lately. It's like, okay, Trump survived an assassination attempt. The Supreme Court is ruling in his favor on like 2 or 3 cases, right? It's like, man, he's going to be our next president, right? Perception is reality. I thought nothing can hold this guy down. So the rest of the world now starts to see that this is happening. And what happens? The dollar is rising because they know with Trump as president, the economy is going to grow, right? So what is the flip side of that coin? What does it tell us? Oh, if Biden's president, or but at that point Biden, but now no, Harris or Hillary or Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or whoever they decide, the convention is going to be the person. Well, but under Biden, it's like his economic plan is not growth. Nobody, if his economic plan was growing the economy, then the dollar would have been strong already, and it wasn't. it didn't actually go up in value and grow stronger until they realized, wow, Trump is winning everything right now. He can't even die, right? It's like, so the world is looking, it's like, wow, this guy is going to be president. So they expect the economy to grow. Now, there's always manipulation happening in the markets, right? So, and I think it just shows how powerful certain groups, certain people are, and some of these shadowy groups and people, we don't know who they are, right? But some of them we do. It's like, why in the world did the day before the assassination attempt on Trump, somebody dump uh 15 million shares of Truth Social? It's like, what? They're shorting 15 million shares of Truth Social? What gives? They were expecting it to go down. You know, the day before the assassination attempt, somebody that knew something somewhere decided, tomorrow we're probably going to have Truth Social come way down. Let's short 15 million shares of it. Right. So you look at these things, it's like things aren't always as they seem. They're truly not always as they seem. But during this whole backdrop of what we've been seeing, China, you know, the basically economic engine of the BRICS nations, and Russia, the with Putin being the spokesperson for the BRICS nations, their goal is to de-dollarize the world, right? So they're getting a lot of help from Biden on de-dollarizing the world, right? It's like what Putin and Biden are working together here. They're actually not, but Biden's policy is destroying the dollar. Well, that's what Putin wants to do as well. So he just doesn't have to work as hard. But in the month of June, what happened? What did China do? In the month of June, they dumped $75 billion worth of US treasuries. They got rid of them. So, as an investor, if you and I were investing and we wanted to lock in a profit because we thought down the road it's going to be worth less, we better get rid of it now. Is that what happened? Or does China simply need money? And so they sold something at a high, but always, you know, you look into the future, it's like they didn't think the US dollar was going to be strong. Why? Why do they think the dollar is at a high point? They're going to start liquidating as much as they can, as quickly as they can, because they expect down the road it's going to be worth less, right? So this is what they're doing: de-dollarizing the world, flooding the market with U.S. treasuries. Now, who's the buyer, right? Who is the buyer of all these treasuries that are being dumped on the open market? It's the buyer of last resort. It's the Fed. Nobody else really wants them. You know, Japan's not buying US treasuries. Nobody's really buying US treasuries except the Fed. Now, they don't have money that's just growing on trees. Where do they get it from? They print it, right? So they're buying US treasuries that the rest of the world doesn't want with money that they're printing out of thin air. And you know what? This is why the Fed meeting today, when Jerome Powell basically said, we're going to keep rates paused for a bit, but probably September we're going to lower them. They probably will lower them because they have to save face, right? They have to basically show the world, we told you we were going to do it and we did it. Because if they don't, which technically they shouldn't, because you lower rates if you think that you've killed inflation. They haven't killed inflation. In fact, the fact that Fed is having to buy all these US treasuries means they're printing money out of thin air. That is inflation. Inflation's not going away. It's going to get worse as the rest of the world starts to be de-dollarized, and that's going to force us to print even more. So I think we're going to enter into a time of massive inflationary pressure, right? So what's going to be the result of that? Raising rates again to slow down inflation. And there's a lot of pieces that are kind of starting to play into this, which is going to worsen the US economy, which means they're going to have to print more.
Dr.
What's
Kirk,
one of them?
I have a
Yeah.
question, if I may. I have a question for the audience out there, just to provide a longitudinal perspective. You said just a moment ago that the Fed is not only the buyer of last resort, obviously, of its own fake fiat currency, but that the Fed is also the cause of the inflationary pressures, if I'm understanding correctly. Is that
Correct.
not itself a form of market manipulation at an international scale?
I would say so. And you know what? This is why when there's a world's reserve currency, right? They always fail. Ultimately, they're always going to fail. They have a limited lifespan. Prior to the US dollar being the reserve currency, it was the British pound sterling. Prior to that, you had the Dutch currency, you had the Greece currency, you had different currencies throughout time. And why do they always lose favor? Because people have a short-term memory. It's like, well, we understand that you're the world's reserve currency, which means you have to print more than what you need for domestic demand. And then people say, oh no, years into this, you're decades in, usually it's like, well, boy, you're flooding the world with your dollars. We don't want you to be the reserve currency of the world. You're squandering your time in the sun. There's dollars everywhere. There's debt everywhere, right? But if I were an American policymaker, it's like, we have to. We have to print more than what we need because of international demand. The petrodollar, they all use US dollars in exchange for oil and everything else, right? So here's where reserve currencies have a lifespan. And we're at the end of it. We're at the end of the historical pattern of how long that they last, right? So ultimately, this is by design, I think, because what comes next is is you have to destroy the old system for a new one to be born. You can't have them both running parallel, right? So what's going to be born is central bank digital currency, which is all about people control. It's about monitoring of your bank account 24/7. This is where digital social profile, your social credit score comes in, because ideologically based testing of your spending to cut you off from your money, right? So this is why CrowdStrike, to me, was such a big deal, because everything I just explained, evangelicals, Catholics all over the world are thinking, what? This is the mark of the beast. And you're probably right, right? When you can't buy or sell based unless your ideology matches up with theirs, well, if that's not Revelation 13, I don't know what is, right? But CrowdStrike, we don't have to think in a dystopian future when it's happening right now. Because last week, I think when CrowdStrike went, software upgrade, it caused all these systems based on Windows servers globally. And you know what? CrowdStrike is the cybersecurity suite for most of the Fortune 500 companies. I mean, it's big, right? It's big. So it went down. And what happened in America? United, American, Delta, all grounded, right? You had hospitals that couldn't do surgeries because their software wouldn't work. In Australia, which SG, you and I have talked about this before on previous chats, is Australia about 5 or 6 months ago started going completely digital, getting rid of their paper currency. First, they said, we're going to limit to $500 a day coming out of an ATM machine. Then they got rid of ATM machines. Then a couple months ago, they passed legislation that said, we're going completely digital, cashless society. Well, what happens when their cashless society is based on something that CrowdStrike was responsible for? It's like nobody could buy anything, right? I mean, this is a problem, right? So this is what it turned out in a couple of days, and banks weren't sending wires. I mean, with what we do as a company, that we get millions of dollars of bank wires coming in every day. And we also have to have millions going out to pay the depository for the metals that we purchased for clients. Normally, this works like clockwork. You send a wire, it goes to the receiving bank within an hour. Next day, it left our account, but it never showed up at the new other account. It's like, so the next day we checked, and it's like, okay, still not there. Late the following afternoon, it finally showed up. It's like, man, disruption. Banks weren't sending wires. Now imagine, fast forward to a day where somebody decides to flip the switch because of your ideology, and it's not just 2 days of disruption. It's maybe, which impacted the economy, travel, your ability to spend money. Hotels couldn't take reservations, right? It's like, what is going on here? So imagine if it's a week or a month or a year or for the rest of your life that you can't, because your ideology is different. And the globalists don't like what political party you give to, or what church you tithe to, or the kind of food that you eat, or the kind of car that you drive, right? And so this is very easy to flip the switch. So we then have to ask ourselves, well, how close are they? How close are they to central bank digital currency? Well, they're really close. So last weekend, well, when was this? Now, I don't know, 4 or 5 days ago, I was going to the Bank for International Settlements website. And all of the viewers here can go there, go to bis.org and look up Project Orem. It's a new project that they just released information on. So, what is it? Orem is a retail CBDC technology prototype comprised of basically a wholesale interbank system. That's the repository of all your digital money. That's central bank digital currency. And a retail e-wallet system setting up two different types of tokens. This is the key. You've got the intermediated central bank digital currency and stable coins that are just backed by the CBDC. But the stable coins are not a direct liability of the central bank. CBDC-backed stable coins are liabilities of the issuing bank. So view that as like Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies that are not CBDC. So what does this Project Orem do? It's pulling together everything. It's pulling together decentralized cryptocurrency with central bank digital currency, which is centralized and complete control. And now a retail e-wallet system that pulls all of these together. And that e-wallet is the connection to you and how you spend. So people have been asking me for a long time. It's like, Kirk, there's got to be a parallel system that comes up, decentralized blockchain, having decentralized wallets like Uniswap and things like that, right? Well, what this Project Orem does is it's pulling it all together. It's almost like there is no escape. To me, that is the mark of the beast, right? But I don't think there's going to be an escape with unified ledgers and everything else in the digital world. But I do think there is an escape when you're out of that system with tangible assets like gold, like silver, that you can use in an alternative economic system where you don't participate in that digital slavery. You're using something to barter with back and forth. I think that's the way it's going to be established, because this Project Orem is actually grand in its scale and how it covers pretty much everything in the digital ecosphere.
That's really incredible. And the name itself, I think, attests to the inspiration from the occult and from the paganism that exists, quite frankly, in the international pulpits of power, the entire archetype that has, or excuse me, the architecture that has orchestrated the events that you're talking about. I want to get into a territory here that may be just slightly speculative, and that territory is the other side of this process. I think after witnessing the social media revolution that seems to have been happening in the Western world over the last 3 to 4 years, you're not going to have any sort of peaceful acceptance, certainly, of a long-term government centralized control over money, value exchange, bank accounts, the ability to buy and sell, things that the book, as you referenced a moment ago, outright describes. And so on the other side of that, we will have to come together, I think, and uh, orchestrate something of our own, if I can use the intention and the terminology. And I think that metals, commodities, things that have real and tangible value, and perhaps not even just ores, but other things of value that are returned to proper valuations worldwide, such as rubber from the sub-Saharan African continent, for example. I think those are going to be the bases, if I may be, a little bit speculative here, on how that's going to come together. But from your background and history, more than 30 years in investments, understanding, excuse me, how markets work, intimately involved with how this fiat system has built us to this point towards a CBDC global orchestration that really amounts to a turnkey tyranny. What is the solution on the other side when we begin to design these things out on our own?
So I think there's a couple of solutions. One is an immediate one, and one is more of a longer term one, right? So the immediate one is, don't be digital. Don't have these paper assets. Don't have something that's so easily manipulated that they can cut you off with the flip of a switch or a bad software upgrade. Give me a break. Company that's that big, they're going to test and test and test and test, right? They're not going to release something that shuts down the world, right? It's like, okay, maybe meant to be, maybe it was a test, right? But getting out of that digital world into something that's tangible, that's the immediate thing that you can do now. And I would rather be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months early than one day late, right? So you always want to be early because in this type of an environment, late might be too late, even if it's a day late, right? So I prepare, stay ahead of the curve, understand the trends that they're establishing and act accordingly, right? So a more longer term solution is a political one, right? And we're starting to see um, things come into play that I think could be very interesting, which is states rising up with their states' rights and wanting to have their own currency systems that are backed by gold, most of them digital, right? It's like a central bank digital currency, except at the state level that's backed by gold. So you get out of the Fed, you get out of the Fed Now app, you get rid of all of this stuff. Um, you look at what Trump is wanting to do for all of this. You have to keep the economy afloat because if the economy comes crashing down, people are going to want the fix, right? They're going to want the fix that the globalists want, which is, oh, we'll come and fix it with central bank digital currency. Don't worry, it's just a system of debits and credits, and if you want your social security payments, anything like that, you have to have this, right? We're going to fix it. Well, that's going to be people will buy into that if the economy tanks. So what Trump is wanting to do is something that the founding fathers wanted, which they're get rid of income tax. We didn't have personal income tax in America when America was established. That came like over 100 years later. Right? What did we have? Tariffs on imported goods. That's how the country made money. So, and the magic behind that and the brilliance is when you have a tariff on a foreign good, it makes it more expensive, which means people are going to want to start to buy American instead of the expensive foreign goods because the tariffs are so high. So that's going to hurt their economies. It's going to grow ours because jobs follow manufacturing. If people are buying American, we're creating more jobs. Now there's more people spending, there's more people investing, there's more sales tax revenue, there's more all this stuff, right? And hopefully we get rid of income tax, right? And we go with tariffs because I think that is a really good solution. But this is the kind of things that the worse the economy gets, the more likely people will give away their freedoms. Well, I think what's coming next is bird flu. Right? I think that is the next pandemic. And we've talked about this on previous shows. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Well, now the American health, the USDA, the American Medical Association, the FDA, they're all saying we've got this problem, bird flu. It's going to they've already instituted emergency use mechanisms, which these new protocols are what they had during COVID-19, the Wuhan strain, right? Which said when people go into the hospital, they're going to get remdesivir, right? When they go into the hospital, they have to be vaxxed to go anywhere. You're going to have to get boosters. There's got to be social distancing, right? You have to wear masks. These are the protocols put in place. They just went over their emergency use algorithms and what's going to happen during the next pandemic. And they're already creating fear in the hearts and minds of people, saying that this bird flu, the former head of the CDC said it's got a mortality rate of 20%, where coronavirus, the first one, had 0.6%. So people think, what? One out of every 5 people is going to die. We better. It's like, good grief, it's the flu, right? But anyway, fear causes people to make wrong decisions. When that happens, I do think that mandates are going to be coming down the path with it. So that is going to impact the economy. It's going to impact traditional investments. But remember, gold, silver, they thrive on chaos, uncertainty, turbulence, change. So these are the times where don't be afraid of what your retirement is going to do, right? Just take action now because some of these things are coming. The writing is on the wall, right? And we can take advantage of it rather than that taking advantage of us.
Indeed. And so I have one final question then towards that same end. And we talk about getting ahead of trends, understanding the macro movements of things, positioning ourselves if we're able to in such a day and such a time as this to absorb some of that. President Trump very recently spoke at a Bitcoin conference. While I
Yeah.
personally and again, this is my own personal opinion, I don't believe that Bitcoin will be around forever. I do think that it essentially represents the gold standard, if I can use the pun, for the cryptocurrency
Mhm.
underpinning and the infrastructure that's been built out with that. So, is it conceivable on the other side of the chaos, the panic, the craziness, with a second Donald Trump presidency and some amount of stability restored, that we see a digital system and a conventional physical commodity based system in marriage with one another for the first time ever?
We could, and or we could see a digital system that's backed by a physical metal like gold, right? So, so Trump stopped short of doing what RFK Jr. wanted, which was actually having Bitcoin as a reserve. Wanted 4 million Bitcoin to match the amount of gold that the U.S. owns. Keeping it as a reserve. Trump stopped short of that a little bit, but here's the personality and behind all of these statements is people are now starting to talk about cryptocurrency as a legitimate currency, right? It's a perception. What do people want? They want safety and they want growth, right? Now, don't look at cryptocurrency as safe. It's not. Look what happened with CrowdStrike, right? Everything can be shut down. Now it's private, yes, but privacy and safety aren't the same thing. So the only thing that actually fits the bill, privacy, safety, growth right now are tangible assets like gold and silver. But I think we are entering that world where you could start to see some of those things running parallel together.
Absolutely remarkable. And I look forward to checking in with you, sir, as those updates build themselves out and we begin to see whatever infrastructure lies before us. Thank you very much for taking the time today. It's very appreciated. Where can people find you if they'd like to learn more or if they have any questions?
So, two places. You can just call us. It's 720-605-3900 and just say SG sent you, or simply go to the website that we have for this chat, which is kepm.com/SG. So, like Kirk Elliott Precious Metals, kepm.com/SG.
Indeed. As always, Dr. Kirk, it's been a stimulating discussion and a great conversation. Again, I look forward to checking in with you as these events flesh themselves out. It's going to be a wild ride until that symbolic and highly appropriate November 5th date. For the
It
audience
is
out there,
absolutely.
for the audience out there, I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. I'll be back with each of you again soon on the Q News Patriot. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. God bless. Bye bye.